Alrighty, welcome to today's YouTube video, and in this video, I'm going to be starting a new series, kind of a programming along with me series, where I essentially just sit down and write training blocks live, for the most part, unedited, unfiltered, very few cuts, that sort of thing. This series is going to center around my client Seagan Packett and our prep for USAPL Midwest Regionals. So at the time of recording, we were 13 weeks out, which gives us about 3 blocks of training into the meet. So I felt like this was a really good time to start this series, as a lot of our training is starting to really kind of come together and set us up for that final push into meet day. Now, I was inspired to do this video due to the fact that I think defining a training system and defining the way a coach, and in this case myself, goes about programming and the thought process and the troubleshooting, it's very difficult to do. And I think it's easier to just show you. Right? So this series is really going to be very raw, very in the weeds, very nitty gritty, kind of nerdy, where we're sitting down and we're just writing a training block, and you're going to see my thought process in person, how I go about planning top set progressions across multiple blocks, how I plan to kind of periodize us down into the meet and kind of start working to some singles and whatnot, how I plan to kind of peak him into the meet, the tapering approach, because in this case we're going to be doing a full taper week, how I write back downs, anything like that, any changes that are made, we'll be covering in this series. So without further ado, enjoy.
Writing Seagan's first block here for USAPL Midwest Regionals. Now, I feel like this is a really good time to kind of start this, to show this block or even continue this as a series, just due to the fact that, yes, we've been, knowing he's training for this meet and whatnot. We've been calling these, prep, these blocks, prep. But this is kind of the start point of like the final push, where really things are going to start really building towards the end point. So we'll be kind of making some adjustments, but nothing like, crazy. Seagan's training is extremely predictable. I think that's why he's a really good person to do this for. I could probably sit down and write his next 3 blocks, give them to him, and it would probably go pretty well. Obviously, we're not going to do that. We're going to make adjustments if needed as we go, but that's kind of where we're at. So I'm able to really think long-term with him. Sometimes you'll have clients where you're really thinking more block to block and just, making the necessary adjustments, but with him, everything's super predictable. I can probably mentally really plan out a lot of the meet prep from like a loading standpoint, and it'll probably go hopefully well. So I want to do this with him. Now, to give you some background, this is my like macro cycle planning sheet, basically where I throw the schedule up. So he'll be competing on September 6th or 7th, likely the 7th. With him, we do 4-week blocks generally, and we also run a taper weekend of the meet. So we will do a full taper into the meet. I find that works well for him, just because, one, he's just peaked super hard as I think we've done 2 meets together. He's just peaked incredibly well. I mean, we're talking 5 kilos on bench, 7 kilos on squat, 5 to 7 kilos on deadlift, which is always what we're looking for, is any sort of just matching what we can do in the gym on the platform, or even getting a little bit, is always awesome. And he tangibly feels better on the platform than he does in the gym. And yeah, we're just going to stick with this plan, at least for this meet. Now, just for a little bit of additional background, we've just ran 2 blocks. Again, we've been calling them prep, but really this is the beginning of like the final push of multiple blocks really coming together to kind of end in one big day at the end here, which will be at USAPL Midwest Regionals. So I've got some of his top set reps, the periodization of that kind of planned out here. So with him, I was originally going to run, you can ignore some of the color coding. It's kind of messed up now. It was originally color coded, but now I've kind of made adjustments over the last few blocks of how I want to do this. With him, going into USAPL Nebraska State Champs, we ran this approach of 3-2-1. Now, normally I like to give people like 2 blocks of singles into a meet. But with him, we ran the approach of 3-2-1, and it went well. And I think Seagan's an example of someone, he doesn't really need singles on squat or even bench for that matter, because both lifts went well. So we're going to do that for both lifts. The other thing, too, is we've just came off 2 blocks of singles on bench. And while bench is going well, I think that the singles are a little bit exhausted. I don't think pulling singles out of his program is going to, hurt the progression of bench press. In a lot of cases, some of my athletes run singles year round. With Seagan, we don't. But with him, I don't feel the need to kind of run the singles all the way through till meet day, or even run like a block of doubles and singles all the way through. We know where that top end is. We don't need multiple blocks to really express that or find that top end. So I think kind of just resetting it, blowing it up, just kind of setting that progression again with triples into doubles into singles is going to be best for us. Again, in a lot of cases, I probably would run singles all the way to the meet, or maybe a block of doubles and singles. But this is the approach we took into USAPL Nebraska State Champs, and it went well. And again, while bench is going well, this block, especially this block, I think he's probably going to match his all-time PR, but with a really clean pause. This block, where last block was a little bit sketch. Again, I don't think we necessarily need it. I think from a mental standpoint as well as just kind of catching some momentum, starting this off with triples is going to be the way to go. For a secondary bench day, we typically keep that like sets of 4 to 2, somewhere in there for that top set, and then keep the back downs a little more consistent. We're going to stick with that. We're going to really periodize these. Again, his bench, I feel like we can be a little more aggressive with those top sets and like the periodization of those, as opposed to a lot of people. I like to keep it pretty static. But I think with him, 4s to 3s to 2s should work really nicely. And his bench is not very finicky or sensitive to adjustments. With his secondary squat day, just want to go back and touch on this. It's a pause squat. With that top set, we're going to run 3s for 2 blocks. We've just got done running 2s, and then we'll run doubles into the meet. And again, we've always kept that doubles to triples. That's kind of a staple for us, ascending doubles to triples, and we'll stick with that. And then his deadlift, we've just got done running like just a wave of rep work. So with him, for a little backstory, going into the meet, we ran 1 block of singles, USAPL Nebraska State Champs, and then we realized, okay, hey, there's more here. If we keep the singles in, there's a little more here. And I believe it was either 1 or 2 blocks where we ran singles and ended up like pushing that PR beyond what he was able to really do going into Nebraska State Champs. Since then, we ran a block of triples, 2 blocks of doubles, culminating in a double PR, so a rep PR with 245. So we went 240, block 1, which is a PR double, and then 245 for block 2. I think we're at a point now where we know his deadlift probably just goes best when running singles. So that's kind of going to be the plan. So we're going to run that to the meet, and I'm going to probably range some of these out in the long term here. And I've got some squat ranges. We've got a goal or a number for squats that we think we're going to be at for regionals as well. So we might be planning some of that. So yeah, that's the plan. Let's get to actually writing the training block. So what I typically do is I like to just write the actual microcycle first and just get the bare bones, no weights, no RP, nothing, just the empty week, to then paste it across the block and then start to range things out and really build things out from there and flesh everything out. So we'll start off with deadlift. Obviously, we're going to run singles all the way to the meet. So this will be a single. I'm going to make this a set of 4 here, mostly because I just want to keep some of the rep work in and give us something to periodize down from. So this will probably be 4s for a block or 2 and then probably go to 3s for the most part. These are both percentage-based sets, so I'll just put a little placeholder percentage here so I know to go back in and write that. We've been running that percentage-based for a little bit now just to kind of set the progression, because he takes such big jumps on his deadlift. He just, squat deadlift for him, he takes huge jumps, he's very strong. But to do that, we don't really want the percentage work to be a percent drop, because then we're going to have big swings in workload across the whole block, versus if we can set this progression slower than the singles, or the top set rather, we're going to see less large swings in progression. I'll be thinking a lot out loud here. So the accessory work we'll leave pretty much the same. I'm going to probably... I'll just probably leave that. The hamstring curls I think can stay. We'll probably just push these to 10 to 12 just for a few blocks, and then we'll probably pull it down into the meet like 8 to 10 or whatever. I'm going to completely change the back accessories just because they're pretty unspecific. They don't really need to stay static, but I think it's going to give us a good opportunity to really, this is the time, if we're going to change anything like this before the meet, now's the time, and then we can kind of set a new progression. So we'll kind of blow all that up and start fresh with a lot of these accessories, which is what I like to do from time to time, especially when like starting a new macro or a meet prep or whatever the case may be, just to give something fresh for the lifter. Nothing really new. We're not going to be doing anything crazy. Set count's going to stay relatively the same. It's just for a mental standpoint for the athlete. The secondary deadlift day looks like this. Just a 3x1 here. We're going to be leaving that in. That's kind of all we really needed with him, is just keeping the percentage-based singles here nice and easy and running that all the way through. And then following that up, I'm going to knock the reps on this up a little bit. That gives us a little room to push these down. The RPE is pretty low on these, but it's more of a practice thing than anything. Even on both RDL days, we're not really pushing. Might give them a little more here. And again, same thing with the back accessories. We'll come back to that and change that. That's how the deadlift's going to look. For bench press, like we said, we're going to run 4s. So we'll run 2 top sets for him. This is similar to the percentage-based drop stuff we do with the squat deadlift. We take pretty big jumps on bench as well. I don't want him taking 7 kilo jumps on bench each week, and the back down's also progressing 7 kilos. So I give him a secondary top set. He's usually kind of nerfed from like a performance standpoint by the time this set rolls around. Whoops. But it gives us the opportunity to really still slow that progression down. So like a lot of times you'll see like 5 kilo jumps or even 2.5 kilo jumps on this set week to week, and this one's like 7. And then we'll make this a set of 4. So he'll run a set of 4, and then we'll give him a set of 5, I think. Give me one sec. Okay, I changed my mind. I'm going to make this percentage-based just because I don't want to do like a top set of 4, then a top set of 5. If this goes well, we'll stick with this. Otherwise, we might swing back to that old structure. But I think this is actually going to be a little better too, because sometimes this set of 5 does get tough. Like I said, he's a little nerfed in performance. So I think making this an actual back down as opposed to an additional top set probably makes a little bit more sense here. So I've got this backed off 6% plus an additional 3% because we're adding a rep. So it's really going to be about 2 or so, 1.5 to 2 RPs less than the top set. I'll make these percentage based to set that progression. So that way we're not seeing huge swings on both sets or all the sets, just 2 of them. So this is something else I'll commonly do. A lot of times with squat and deadlift with people, but I think secondary bench day here, it makes sense to do with Seagan as well. That tertiary bench is pretty much consistent every block. We just run a couple tempo sets. I'll make it, I'm going to make it triples just to give us something to periodize down from. We've done this a lot in the past. You'll see past blocks here, like a lot of doubles and whatnot, but like even, let's see here. Like this was probably triples. Yep. So it's something common we do where we'll just kind of alternate between triples and doubles. This was percentage based at the time. We've since made this RPE to kind of make it a little more dynamic in like our loading and whatnot. So it's not just all the same thing every single block, and he can actually auto-regulate some as well. So we'll make that RPE based. These back downs here we run as percentage based. So we'll do that. And then the primary session here, we're going to stick with our plan of 2 top sets. And I think that makes sense here. So we'll run triples. Then I'll probably just give him another set of 4 right after that. Actually, I'm going to go 5s. And I think that should be fine. He's doing a lot of back down 5s, but I think we'll be okay. I'm not too worried about it. I'm actually going to make this 6s. So that'll be the plan there. From a percentage drop standpoint, we'll do about an 8% drop, but I need to, 8% should actually, 8% flat should be good there. Let me make sure I fixed this. Yep. Okay. So that'll be the game plan there for bench. And from an accessory movement standpoint, we're going to keep a lot of this consistent. So we've been running machine chest press. That's kind of been a staple for us for a while now. And then, that dumbbell bench is there. So I think for here, we'll just knock some reps up. So 7 to 9, we'll go 8 to 10, I think is going to be a spot to start this at. And then we'll probably go 7 to 9 next block and maybe even like 6 to 8 the following block. But he runs that top set, then into an AMRAP. And then we give him like 1 high rep set to kind of finish the workout off. We'll probably give him a little more RPE there as well. Triceps, I'll leave static. I usually like to not really move those around much. And then bicep curls, I can kind of just leave B for the most part. I think we should be fine. From there, I might just consolidate this down. Whoops. Simplified a little bit. Actually, let's just make one of these like a lower rep set. Okay, we'll do that. Tertiary session, I believe it's just some triceps, or is it empty? No, triceps, yep. So we'll do that. I'm not going to mess with this either. Again, it's consistent. We run the lower rep tricep work on this day, just a little bit less volume in general. Just probably going to be a little bit easier to recover from. And then looking at the secondary day, get that a little bit bigger. And then we'll end up doing the bicep work here can probably just stay the same, kind of two lower rep sets. I might actually just simplify this a little more for him, just so it's a little bit easier to kind of follow. And do 3 sets into the AMRAP. And then this day here, the dumbbell lateral raises we'll just keep. For the dumbbell bench, I'll probably reset the progression a little bit and give him a little bit more room to kind of progress us down as a way to just add load. So it's just a way to artificially kind of add load on these accessory movements, which are less likely to be seeing leaps and bounds of progress. You know, adding 5 pounds or 10 pounds to each hand to your dumbbell bench is really, really good, and that's going to be really tough to do consistently. So this is a way to just kind of reset things and kind of keep the needle, you know, moving the needle with some overloading of actual load itself and weight on the bar. So that should be good for bench. For squat, lastly, like I said, we're going to run triples. Now with him, we don't really push a ton of rep work hard. I want to make both of these just triples. So this will actually be a percent drop set. We drop about 6%. So we'll leave that be again. It'll be about 2 RPE or so. I'll make this 4. Give us a little more room to kind of progress down slightly. So it'll be 6% drop and then an additional 3% because we're adding a rep. And then this day will be percentage based, or these sets will be percentage based. So going back to what I was talking about before, where a lot of times I will make these back downs percentage based to kind of set that progression. This top set or this middle set back down can swing across the block quite a bit, but these stay more static. So like just looking at his last block, right? We go 2 sets of 4 at 182, 187, 192, just about 5 kilo jumps, 212, 222, 237, like big jumps. If I did that on all the sets, we're probably going to really start to run into issues with just maybe, you know, stimulus being right early in the block, but then being way too much late in the block. So it's just a way to kind of set that progression and slow it down. And honestly, we probably won't even add load to these block to block very often. I mean, very, you know, occasionally if in times of like quick progress, we might add a little bit of load to these. But for the most part, these are probably staying steady, probably till the end of prep. And then we'll look at maybe progressing these a little bit more post-meet. And then the secondary day is pretty straightforward with him. We do no accessory work on his primary for squat. The secondary day, like I said, we're going to run the ascending triples. Run for triples for 2 blocks and 2 doubles. And I'll just make this a set of 5. Give me 1 second. I want to go back and look at a past block. Yeah, we're just going to leave this 5s for now, I think, is what we'll plan on. So this will just be a set of 5 percentage base, same idea there. So that's squat. We need to just build out squat accessory movements. So with him, we're just running leg press. That's been pretty consistent. So we're just going to keep that in because we don't want to change anything too much. And we'll probably just leave this be. I think we're good there. We just do 2 hard sets and then like 1 nice and easy set just to get a little more volume in. So that is the squat. That really should be everything. So we need to build out accessories. So I think chest supported makes sense here. I like to keep that in a lot of times for people on days where we want the low back stress to be limited. So he's already deadlifting. We don't need more. So we'll leave the chest supported in here. We've got underhand lat pull down, seated shoulder with neutral grip, and then seated close grip with the forward lean. So I think on this day, let's leave this. Give me 1 second. I want to think. I'm going to actually get rid of this as a slot. I think with us kind of getting in closer to the meet, we're just going to pull like 3 sets of back workout. We might end up seeing, the bench press feel a little bit fresher on this day. So we'll just do that. I don't think it's going to be a big difference there. Make this session a little bit easier to kind of get through and, potentially see a little bit better recovery going into this day. Again, obviously they're completely different muscle groups and exercises, but we are still kind of stimulating that upper body and stressing that upper body to an extent, even if it's kind of antagonist muscle groups. But I think, we may end up seeing that bench press feel a little better on this day. So I think this will be a good little experiment as well. So the chest supported row, last block, we ran it set up like this. So again, I think resetting that, 2 sets of 8 to 10, we'll go 2 sets of 12 to 15. So 3 total sets there. Then the close grip lat pull down after that, we went 3 sets. It was underhand lat pull down last block. I think here we're going to kind of keep a similar approach. Probably give him, I think, honestly, probably just like 2 higher rep sets should be okay. And then 1 AMRAP to kind of finish the session off. Should be a good spot to be. Honestly, yeah, we'll leave that there. And maybe as we get a little closer, maybe we'll pull a set or something. But consolidate that down a little bit. This session, I do want to push these hard, though. Kind of have this be like an attempt to be a little bit of a higher performing back day in a sense. Just because this session's pretty chill. So it's a good opportunity to really kind of at least really push the loading on this day. Even if volume's a little less, like I said. So seated shoulder width, neutral grip lat pull down. We'll probably just start this off, honestly. Where were we last block? Probably something similar. We might just do this. Probably rerun this. And then what we'll do is next block probably make this 6 to 8. And then probably even bring it a little lower into that final block. Kind of leave this as a higher rep set as well. So similar approach here. They honestly look very similar. There's just no AMRAP here, just so that, we save a little bit of juice for the rest of the lat pull down work. But then we'll probably periodize these similarly. This will probably be 6 to 8 next block, and then maybe like 5 to 7 for the final block. So we'll do that. I think that's a good spot to be there. So that should be that. I'm going to go ahead and just double check that the percentages are where I want them and get the formulas kind of in place, and then we will pick back up. All right, so I've got everything across the block, just the empty micro. So now we need to actually put intensities and ranges to this. So we're just going to mimic like regular progression for the RPs. That's usually how I like to kind of do things. So I like to keep these static and then just kind of like manipulate the ranges from there, because I want bar speed to look the same block to block for the most part on each week. And then as we get a little later in prep, we may end up kind of progressing the top sets on the primary day slightly more, but we need to be careful with that. So like once we find a progression that like really works, we're going to really stick with that. Now last block we were pushing deadlift a little extra harder than we maybe normally would. So I'm going to have things finish in RPA, and I want to be a little conservative this block, knowing we have 3 blocks of these singles to go. This will be a 7. This will be an RP 6. This will be an RP 5. So 5, 6, 7, 8. From here, his best deadlift in a meet, let me pull up his lifting cast, or open powerlifting rather. So his best deadlift in kilos is 262. Now, post-meet, we pulled right around that. Trying to remember which one it was. This meet we pulled 260, and then I think the following block we didn't really, I want to say we didn't push the deadlift. No, we ran triples. So we ended up pulling 260, which was a gym PR. He gets a lot out of a taper, especially on like the deadlift. Just, a little bit of a pullback the week of the meet. Just gets him a lot. So 260 is kind of where that best deadlift is. He just pulled 245 for 2, and we can actually watch that. So pulling that up here. Let me find that. me one second, let me find that. So here's the 245 for 2. And just usually like looking at like rep 1 here, we're going to be able to see bar speed. I think 260 is probably where he would be at on the day for a single. If we want to look at the actual E1RM calculator I have in the sheet, it's got him at 265, so right around there. I think hitting 260, maybe 262 is probably going to be a good spot to be. Since it's been a minute since we've hit singles, I'm going to make this week 4 range a little bit loose, kind of to be determined. So I'm probably just going to say 262.5, knowing we can take 260 if we need to. But that would be right around his all-time best. And for like the first block of prep would be awesome, because then we can maybe, I'd like to set things up so that we're pulling closer to 270, 272 by the end of the prep, which I think is realistic, especially as we get into singles. From there, we'll mimic the progression of that block because it went really well. So we took 250 week 2, then jumped about 12 kilos. Week 3 rather. Going into the actual meet itself from a progression standpoint, like from a pacing, we went 242 up to 255. So again, about 12 kilos. So I think setting it up so that like this is just 250 makes sense for week 3. Wait, there we go. So I'm going to set this at 250 for now. And then I think just jumping like 12 kilos back each week makes sense. 237.5. We'll say 230 here. And then we'll say 225, 217. So that's how we'll set things up here. Knowing next block, right? Let's say we pull 262. It's an all-time PR match, a gym PR, and it moves well. It moves at an 8, which I think it will. From there, just because, again, he's going to be disproportionately worse at rep work than singles, I think. From there, what we'll likely do is set this at like 267 and then maybe just bump everything by 2.5. And that way we get a little bit more overreach on the second block, and then we can get a little bit more overreach on block 3. So that's how we'll set that up. For the percentage work, I'm going to just mimic the actual percentages, and then just go in and, or the the desired intensity, and then just go in and rewrite the actual formulas, and I can kind of show everyone how I do that as well. So we do about an 8% back off here, which is going to be, about 3 RP, 2 to 3 RP, and then a 15% back off, which is going to really just make it pretty light. That's kind of what we want out of this rep work. Now, I like to use just a percentage chart. Pretty simple here. I have a spreadsheet that literally is just a percentage chart that is just basic. Nothing super special here. It's a basic percentage chart that I do a lot of my percentages with. So that's what I'll be using here, and I'll show how to kind of write that. So I'll just take this just as a template and then actually just change the numbers. So you'll see 8% back off. So we have this additional 8% back off, but I want it to be off an theoretical like RP8 top set, because that's what this top set is. So how I do this is a set of 4 at RP8 is 83.7%. So we need to just fix this. So 83.7 plus an additional 8% off of that to give us our back down percentage. So last block for a double it was 215. It's gonna be 202 for 4 now. So it fixes it there, and then we just copy paste that across and fix the weight. So a set of 4 at 7 is 81.1. A set of 4 at 6 is 786. And then a set of 4 at 5 is 762. So the way these kind of work out is if I was programming a set of 4 at RP5, I would write 762. And these are all based off of this number. Okay, that's what they're all based off of. This is just kind of where we estimate is, 1 RM to be most days. So it's based on that. So it's 76.2% of that number minus an additional 8% because I want to back off because the top set is already being hit at 5 RPE. And then the 2x5, pretty straightforward here. 5 at 8 is 811. And actually, these should be good to go. because we're not adding reps here. So I can actually literally just do this. And it should be fixed. Yep. So all good there. Progression is going to stay the same there. Secondary session, really straightforward. It's literally just percentage-based deadlift here. So we're just going to copy paste across. And then when this changes is when we change this number. So if I change this number to 265, whoops. Well, here's an example. It's 165. All these numbers drastically change. So that's how this session kind of goes. But I always just go 74%, 76%, 78%, 80%. Load's not really going to change block to block aside, the occasional bit of progression whenever we do decide to change that training max. So that's deadlift. Deadlift is done, ready to go. What I'll likely then do is next block, like I said, we're running singles for multiple blocks. We want to kind of end at a big endpoint. So it's kind of a block. We'll stack another block on that. We'll stack another block on that. So likely just for some general planning, normally I wouldn't probably plan this out like this, but I'm pretty confident in our ability to kind of plan deadlift out. We're likely going to finish about 262. I could see us finishing about 265 here. And then an additional, maybe 2.5 kilos. We don't really with him need to push like super hard into the meet. It doesn't need to be RPE 10. So like realistically, we never really need to push that final deadlift like super, super hard. Yes, he's hitting it 2 weeks out, which is nice. It gives us a little bit more time to kind of bounce back. But for him, I found we don't really need to RPE 10 his deadlift. Like from an estimation standpoint and how well his deadlift has just performed on meet day, we know if we take an @9 single, 2 weeks out, we're probably taking another 7 or so on meet day itself. So we'll probably try to finish like 267.5 to 270. Again, in a perfect world of progression, but I think this is kind of where we're going to be at with his deadlift. Now, let's do bench press next. Again, not really going to change anything from an RPE standpoint. It's just going to be the ranges that are going to change due to the actual weight or reps that we're doing changing. So we'll go RPE 6, 6.5 to 7. Whoops. 7 to 7.5. And then RPE 8. We have to be really careful with him not to empty the tank on this session. A lot of times I'll write 8 to 9 for a lot of clients on the secondary day, and it's not a big deal. But for him, like there's a fine line to walk where we can hit an 8, but when we hit a 9, like maybe performance on the primary day starts to fall off some. So again, fine line to walk. We need to be a little bit careful. One thing we may do is scrap this set and just make this a 3x5 just for week 4. We'll see how this kind of shakes out though as we write it. So that's the progression. Now let me find a past block of 4s and kind of see where that is, and then we can kind of work backwards from there. All right, so his PR set of 4 is 157, which we hit immediately post states. We've done 162 for 3. And then recently we just did 170 for 2, which is a PR match, and we did that on the secondary day. We see bigger performance on the primary, so we know that we are seeing progress, especially because this was a very smooth set. So actually really stoked with this set here. This set actually earlier than we call Monday, went really, really nicely. So I think with 170 for 2, I think we can plan 160 for 4. I think that's a good spot to be. With him, he's pretty good at rep work on bench. He has a bit of a shorter range of motion, so I think we'll take our pretty much normal progression backwards that we would do, but we'll just set it at 160. And then what we'll do is next block when we run triples, we'll probably take 165, and then we'll probably try to shoot for 170 again for 2, maybe 172.5 for 2 or something like that. But I think this is a good spot. In fact, kind of want to I think this is a good spot to be. I think we'll be okay here. Yeah, because then next block we'll go 165 for 3, which should be a PR triple or potentially PR match triple, but like a secondary session PR triple because post states we did 165 for 3. So yeah, so it'd be a PR match. So we'll do that. I think that sets us up. And again, we're looking at pace of progress here. We don't want to be trying to chase like 7 kilo PRs, and we can just take 2.5, 5, keep everything really steady. that last block in the meet, if we really want to kind of put our foot on the gas with bench press, I think we can. So we'll just set 160 here. This should be a PR set of 4 with him. Take about 7 kilo drops each week. I mean, into 5. So it'll be like 5, 5, 7. So we'll probably just do that. So this will end up being 152 and a half into 145 on the low end there. We'll drop 5 kilos here to 147.5. Set this at 140. And then we'll start the block 142, I think, is a good spot to really be. Especially for the rep sets. I find like probably can get away with like smaller jumps week to week to an extent than with like the higher the reps are, because you know, adding 7 kilos a week with 4 reps is probably going to be a little bit harder than adding 7 kilos with 2. So I think like a lot of times earlier in the block and stuff, I'm probably more likely to just kind of keep these a little more consistent from like a load standpoint here. So that's what we'll do there for the secondary day. Now I need to put some percentage-based work in. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to back this off probably 8%. Let's actually just see how it shakes out. So if we hit the top set here, we know this is going to be 130. I don't want these to be too close together. So we have 5s at... So a set of 5 at 6 is a percentage of 76.2. So what this needs to actually look like is equals M round of here. So we make this 76.2% from 175. Okay. And then additional 8% back off. And that actually works out very nicely. So that's literally how we're going to do it. I just want to make sure loading here. Pretty close. 2x5 at 127. This sets us at 122. But I think that should be okay because it didn't really progress a whole lot across the block just because this middle set was kind of nerfed, like I said. So I think we should be okay to just run with this. It's going to start a little lighter, but it should finish maybe even slightly heavier, which should be fine, honestly. So I'll set this at 6.5. I'll set this at 7. And then I'll probably just set this at 7.5. Just, you know, top set's at 8, but I think just setting this at 7.5 makes sense. Again, and the other thing too, when you see these blue fonts whenever I'm writing programming, it's literally just notes for me. So I know it's based off a 7.5 RP top set minus 8%. So we get the back off, you know, intensity we want. So set of 5 at 7.5 is 799. And then, you know what I'm going to do, actually? I'm going to make this at 8. So the low is a little more pushed. So we'll go 811. There we go. At 7, 786. Perfect. And then at 6.5 is 774. So 122, 125, 127, 130. That should be right around where we finished last block. Last block we finished 132. I think that should be a good spot. And then if we do the top set here at 160, we get 145, which is literally exactly where we were. So this is going to work out pretty much perfectly to set it up like this without having to give him like 2 RPE based sets, as well as then he's not having to do like 2 RPE based sets where the, you know, actual load, I mean, as the block progresses, the load would fall off a little bit on this set here, but I think like early in the block, it's, you know, that way we're not having to write like these so similar and start off 130. So it is going to start a little lighter, and now I might be changing my mind because it's going to start a little lighter. I think we'll leave it be. It is a little different than it's been, and the load is going to be a little lighter earlier in the block. But I think with Seagan, we should be okay with the fact. I wouldn't want to do this on his primary probably, but I think with him, a little bit lower stress early in the block, I think we'll be okay. So I'm going to leave it like this. If we feel like bench is coming in really flat or something on the primary day, I can, just make it an RP based set or make it RP based in the future. But this is really how his bench was structured for a really long time. Like even looking at you know, prep of last block, it was all literally my Google Sheets is broken. It was a RP top set and then a 3x4. So it honestly should work out fine that it's going to end up like this. I don't think it'll be anything too too much of an issue from like a load standpoint. So I think we'll do that. Maybe we'll just knock this up a percent as well to get a little more load going. Whoops. We'll try that for now and see how it goes. So I think that'll be the plan. Tertiary bench session here. We're going to literally run the identical tertiary session. So what I'm going to actually do is I'll just, to make this a little quicker, copy and paste across. Now I want these to be 3s, so I need to fix that. And then these are going to be, needs to say, insert load. So that's the first thing. Real quick, before I forget, I want these to also be 6s. So I actually have to go in and fix these percentages because they're not 5s now. So the loading is going to come down slightly to kind of accommodate that additional rep. So 6 at 6.5 RPE is 751. So it's going to come down some. What was it before? Okay, that should be fine. 6 at 6 is 739. 120 again. Some of these are going to be rounding where it'll be repeat loads, and that's fine. That should work out nicely, so it shouldn't be a big deal. 5.5 is 723. We see a little bit of the rounding starting to come down there on that day. And then 707. So we see 115, 117, 120, 120. Last box progression for 5s was 120, 120, 122, 125. So it is paced like a little bit differently, but I mean, these are light. They're meant to be easy. And it makes it easy then from a progression standpoint. We can just add to this training max over time if we feel the need to. In fact, let's actually do that on bench. Let's give him another 2.5 kilos because I think that's about where that bench is going to be. This block, I think he's probably going to hit 180. We do want to be a little conservative with it, but we can push that. So this will actually fix the loading to 115, 117, 120, and then we'll get an extra 2.5 on the last week. So it makes it easy from a standpoint of actually like letting the formula kind of do some of the work from a progression standpoint. You could also just write this in as I want to finish 122 and then kind of set it yourself. Sometimes I will do that where like I'll write it in as, the percentage to end the block, and then I'll kind of fix some of these jumps to line up where I want. But honestly, this is nice that it goes 2.5 each week. So that works perfectly. If these were weird where this was like 117, I probably want to jump more than 5 kilos on these across the block. So I would probably set this at 115 like manually. So that's just something else I kind of will do sometimes. So that'll work nice. And we need to actually fix the loading. So I have video, and this is how I normally will go about doing this. Let me pull up his video. All right, slight editing error. I accidentally did not play the video and continued programming. So I'm going to catch everyone back up with where I was. So looking back at his tertiary day, this is where I'm going to set the ranges. Now, they're pretty similar to last block. We're going to kind of look to finish the same spot we started the doubles because watching where he finished, this was his 137 for 2 tempo. Okay, rep 1, very smooth. And then rep 2, really good. And I don't think it's out of the realm to say, hey, we could probably look to add a rep to this, and it's probably going to move fine. We never saw any real, rep speed fall off or anything like that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to set this at 137. And then from there, go 135, 130, 127. Next block, we'll probably push these back into doubles, and then we'll look to take like 140, which would be like a 2.5 kilo tertiary double tempo PR, like just progressing that a little bit, and then maybe even 142 to finish prep. We'll see. But this should be a good spot to be. I don't know if these got shown, but I set the progression of these at 115, 117, 120, and 122. Looking at the primary day, I'm going to push the RPE and match it essentially the same it was last block. Later in prep, when these are singles, we may get a little more dynamic with what this RPE is doing. This may start like a 6 to 6.5. This may start, be a 7. This will probably be like a 7. This will probably be like an 8. This will probably be like a 9 to 10. So just getting a little more loading late in prep on that single in particular. But everything else needs to stay the same or else we start changing the program too much, right? Small changes is what we're looking for. So typically I just keep these RPs the same, the actual proximity to failure. I'm looking to really not change. His best triple is 170. He just hit this, and I'll actually pull video up. He just hit this the other day on Monday. This is a double, actually. But I believe the best triple is 170. I will go back and kind of verify that. So that was smooth for the double, and that was, again, on that secondary day. So last time we ran triples, I believe, was post-states block 1. Oh, maybe his PR is 165. I think we're at 165. What was this block? Doubles, I believe. Yep. 170 for 2. So that was the match there. So let's actually just go for 170 for 3. That'd be a 5 kilo triple PR. I think that's definitely going to be like within range. A bit of a reach, obviously, but that's what we're looking for at the end of the block a lot of times, especially on bench. I find you can kind of empty the tank a little bit more often. It's not that big of a deal. So we'll set it for 170. I'll just probably make it a little bit to be determined at the moment, but I think 170 is pretty realistic. From there, we're taking kind of a different approach to an extent. No, I think we'll just do the whole 7 kilo drop, which we find like going into the last week of the block, we just jump a little bit bigger than we typically would. It's a little bit more exponential, if you will. So we'll set it for like 155 to 162.5. And then we'll probably just jump 5 keys each week. I think that'll be the plan. That's typically how we do it with him. And is a good spot to be. Again, big jump kind of final week of the block. Probably start the block a little lighter as well, similar to that secondary session. And I actually want to go back and just look. What was the pacing of this? 150. You know what? We're going to take a little bit of a bigger jump into this session, this top set as well. So we'll set this at 155. Just to kind of mimic the pacing a little bit. I'll set this at 147.5. And then this session here, we'll go 150. So just taking like the historical data and kind of running with that. We went once. What? No, that's Monday. So we went 180, 170. And then, yeah, last 7 kilo jumps. So, yeah, we'll do that. This will kind of mimic that pacing. So we'll go 150, jump 5, which is what we typically do. Then we'll jump 7, then we'll jump 7. So that's how we want to do that. Again, just mimicking that pacing of past blocks, using that data to our advantage is kind of going to be the goal. This is pretty simple. We're literally rerunning this top set to a T. Actually, no, it's 5s now, so we need to kind of adjust loading. I think, where did we finish last block? So we went 4 at 147, and we're giving him an extra 2. So I'll probably look for 5 at 147. We just finished 5 at 155. Now, again, this is the secondary day, but we can still use this as data because both days are kind of high-performing anyways. We can kind of look at last rep bar speed here. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to say, hey, let's throw on a, how much was this again? This is 145. To say let's load 147, especially on the primary day. And again, it's RPE based, so he doesn't have to force that. But let's do that and get a little more progression going on as well with this top set of 5. So I think setting this at, this was, 145 for 5. Yeah, I may have been looking at the wrong day, but it was still 145 for 5. So we'll say 147 for 5. Again, primary day is going to perform probably a little bit better as well. So we could probably get away with that. I think a 2.5 or a 5 kilo jump here. And then I want to say we've just been taking 140 and then 137. Yeah, so that's probably what we'll mimic just to keep that loading in check. Week to week, we're not seeing big swings in load, especially as we're taking bigger jumps on that primary day. And we can set this at 137, 140, 142, 147. Started last block at 137. Oh, wait. 137, 140, 142, 145. Yeah, so same start point, I suppose. Getting a little more reaching at the end is what we'll do because, we were taking 145. Now we'll just take an extra 2.5. So that'll work out nicely. So that's bench. Bench is programmed out. And now we need to wrap up with squats and then just put the finishing touches on the spreadsheet. So again, I'm going to mimic RPE. Now we just had a bit of a rough block of squats, really only the last week. We were planning on taking 285, but he just had a rough day kind of leading into the gym and then just didn't feel super strong today. This is probably the first squat session in a while that we expected to go really well that didn't. I don't think there's anything from a programming standpoint. I just think variables weren't really in line. And to be honest, I think it moved well. And I think he probably just didn't feel amazing on the day. But I think like from a performance standpoint, objectively speaking, like this wasn't too bad. I don't think it's impossible to say he had another, 7 kilos or so. So I think we're okay there. He just played it safe on the day. So from a progression standpoint, we're running triples. Our best triple is 257, and he hit it with room. Post states block 2, we may have ran the triples back. We did. We hit 265. So I think just taking a small PR here, knowing his best double on squat, which was relatively recently, he hit 275. So best triple is 265. Best doubles 275. We'll meet in the middle. Probably try to take 270 for 3. I think is probably where we'll set this at. So before I forget, and this will be kind of TBD, just because sometimes when really swinging back to a different rep range that we haven't been training in a while, I don't like to set things across the whole block super set in stone as much. But yeah, we'll hit RP8. We'll hit RP7, and I think it's just 6 and 5, right? Yep. So just write that in, RP5, RP6, RP7. The backdowns are literally no different, so just to keep it simple, let's copy and paste those across because those are staying set in stone, and we're not progressing those any this block. So those, nothing new there. Just pause squats. How I write that with a pause, same way I would write it comp. I just throw in an additional back off for the variation. So pause, or for pause squats, about 7% drop. Additional, sometimes 6, sometimes 8. It just kind of depends on where I think the person is with that specific variation. But it's we're talking small differences here, and I think 7% for him is pretty middle of the bell curve. So that'll stay the same. And now we just need to write out the actual ranges. So we take big jumps. I'm going to mimic it a little more based off like where the double was. So we took 275, which was intended to just be like 272 originally. And about a 15 kilo jump. I'm probably going to have him just jump 12 for now. Actually, I'll have him jump 15 because this will be a real big reach. So this I'll just set at 255. And then I'm going to actually just set this as suggested load. That way, if we need to drop, if things maybe are trending well but not trending like perfect, I can set this at 267, and it's not like a 10 kilo jump all of a sudden and way different than what we normally would do because we would jump 12 to 15. So we'll actually plan for the 15 kilo jump. 255. So we'll just plan for that. I'll just set it at 10 kilo ranges here. And then from there, I want to say just 12 is typically how we jump. 275, 257, 242. So 15 is what we went there. Then 230, so 12. Let's check what we did this block when we hit that triple PR. That was an intro week. So we went 215, 227. So that'd be 12. And then 242 would be 15. So let's actually just mimic that. That's how we did it. So we'll jump. We planned for 15. We'll plan for another 15 kilo jump here. So this needs to be 240. And this needs to be 230. Oops. And then we'll jump 12 from week 1. So 227.5. 220 is fine there. So that'll be the squat progression. Pretty simple. That'll set us up to kind of end the block with hopefully a triple PR. 267 would be one. 270 would also be one. So that's likely where we'll just look to aim to end the block. Then next block we'll run doubles. We'll probably look to take 277, maybe 280. All right, that was actually Seagan calling me. He's about to go for a bench PR, so we will see, and we can get a live reaction in the YouTube video. Where were we here? I don't remember. Anyways, on to squat now, or the secondary squat day. So again, nothing new here. We're going to literally just mimic the RPE pacing that we normally would. Nothing really new is going to change, especially on this secondary day. We're not really going to overreach or do anything specific. And then from there, we'll look to kind of adjust ranges. We've been kind of progressing this secondary day a little more recently. Just because, like, it for a while, it really stayed static, and we intentionally left it static. But we found there's a little room to add load. So we've kind of actually been chasing a little more load recently with that. So best pause triple on the secondary day is 237. This current block, I'm having him push to 242. I'm probably just going to simply take these ranges and add 2.5 because we have another block of triples next block that we can look to actually progress load. Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry. We'll probably just pull these ranges back 2.5. So next block, we'll probably look to take 242 for 3. And then the following block we'll probably look to take like 247 to 250 for 3 to finish things off. So we'll just pull all these back 2.5 kilos. Still a form of progression because we're pulling 2.5 kilos off, but we're adding a rep. So like the actual volume and whatnot we're kind of getting in is in the proximity to, and I don't want to say proximity to failure because that should stay about steady, but this is setting us up for progression. We're only pulling 2 kilos back, but we're adding reps. So that's how we'll set that. We'll make sure that's where I want that at. 202, 212, 222, 237, 202, 212, 220. Wait, one sec. Yeah, so we'll set it up like this, just 10 kilo jumps week to week. This will be 12. And then from there, the final week, we'll reach a little bit, jump a full 15. So that should work nice. And then, again, pretty simple here. The progression of these are going to actually just stay static so that we're not actually pushing the loading anymore. And this session stays about the same as last block, just adding a little bit more reps, progressing it slightly. From there, for future plans, again, we'll probably just bump everything by 2.5 next block. And then when we run doubles, we'll probably throw another 5 or so on that. Potentially, we'll see. So that's actually his full block. He should be completely ready to go now. So lastly, we need to actually just put in the E1RM calculator, so I will do that. All right, block's done. I just want to show off the bench PR. All-time PR bench. It's 182.5 kilos. Anyways, that's going to do it for the video. If this does well, I'm going to keep making these for his prep. He's got 2 more blocks. I think he's just a good example of someone where it just so happens he's kind of starting this final push into the meet. But 2, his training is just very predictable. So like I can really think and start planning ahead of where things are going to sit. So if you have any questions, let me know. I feel like this is just an example of just kind of in my brain how a powerlifting coach, or how myself specifically, just kind of operates within my own system, kind of plans things out, writes training blocks, etc. So if you enjoy, let me know. And yeah, I'll keep making these. So that'll do it for the video. Thank you for watching.